I'll be gravely insulted.
I'm saying it's like, I don't want it to be so
Totally
that I
understand.
have to,
As long as I don't walk out early. Everybody can walk out early, but
Alright.
okay. So
Okay.
first, just 2 words about Yud-Tes Kislev before I forget.
Wait, I need
Okay? Need paper?
Yeah, I can write that out paper.
You can go in the office and get.
But I want to hear yeah.
So Yud-Tes Kislev. Okay, we'll wait for you. In the meantime, we'll say hi to everybody. Hi to everybody on the camera. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming. It's a beautiful day in Yerushalayim HaKodesh. Mazel tov to Abigail. She had a baby. I don't know. I think she had a boy. I'm not sure. She had something. Okay, that's awesome. So Abigail, who had a baby, but we're not quite sure which kind.
What was this just?
I don't know. I just am assuming because
It's either a boy or a girl.
it's either a boy or a girl. And when I left 2 weeks ago, I'm ready to go. 2 weeks I didn't teach, right? So she was any second, and now so she had Hashem. The second came. Shah Tova by everybody. All the simchas that you want. Okay,
I
so
like to do it in order. First the mister, then the baby. Did I just say that on camera?
no, you're not on camera, but I'm on camera. But nobody heard you. In the right order, in the right time. Okay, that's nice.
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
when you say Shatova, you should have a baby soon. I'm like,
Well,
No, so I'll
you can
say
use your own bone marrow. You don't need a man.
I'll say it differently. I'll say, but when we say b'shat havei baby soon, the implication is like it goes without saying that it should go
Like,
easily.
give me a minute.
Get you
I'm still a
right, get you your husband, and then Be'ezrat Hashem ASAP. Okay, so I guess it's good to talk about that on Yud-Tes Kislev. It's good to make up akasha. So what happened on Yud-Tes Kislev? It's called the Yontif of the Rosh Hashanah of Hasidus. That's what it's called. You know about it? So tonight and tomorrow, and actually tomorrow night also, because by the Hasidim they do everything late. So they have the Yud-Tes Kislev Fabrengen tomorrow night in Binyanei Hauma. It's this year for women.
it's tomorrow night?
It's tonight and tomorrow, but the Fabrengen or the Shir that Rabbi Ginsburg is giving, which becomes it's only for men this year.
If I dressed up, is that like really bad?
No, really bad.
Yeah.
A girl that I knew a million years ago on Purim, she dressed up, and she has like you very straight, very short hair, and she really wore the whole bit. And she was on the bus. In those days, people took buses on Purim, and she was on the bus, the whole get up, and with short blonde hair. And some guy came over to her and gave her a slap on the back, and Freilich in Purim, and she was a super frumest lady and whatever girl. And she was mortified, and she didn't know what to do. And he was like, shikker, the other guy was shikker, he was hugging and dancing, and then she was a girl. Anyway, so don't dress up as a guy.
Someone told me about like the crazy, the Tish every Thursday night, and you go Tish hopping, you go cholent hopping, and I'm like, that sounds like a great scene where like I wouldn't be welcome, because they were a male telling me about it, like, have you ever been? I'm like, no, it's not really relevant, I don't feel like I would be welcome there, but like, I've thought about to be an observer, to be documenting, my culture around me, to dress up as like some small boy, Like,
what'd the guy say?
He's like, oh, that's very interesting, like, that's so cool to do for documenting reasons, but I'm like, I feel like it wouldn't be right for the other people around me, it's just like a selfish reason of like...
It's invasive, I feel like it's going to make us dots.
That's really, you're really religious and holy.
I don't think
it would be
You're holy. Okay, that's a holy.
People around me.
That's a holy.
To me, that's the essence.
I bet this guy that you said that to, you'd have to take out all your earrings, by the way. I bet this guy that you said this to is going to be like looking around now with, and it makes just to make sure that no other girl had that thought. No, we don't listen. If we needed to do it, Hashem would make it available to us. That's how I look at it.
I'm like, okay.
I don't need it.
I'll make my own vegan chocolate.
Yeah. We have now in seminary.
He's going to do all the walks and trails and whatever.
We have now in seminary, by the way, come back to 18-year-old seminary now. Seminary Thursday night is Sholin.
Sholin.
And they have a whole thing. They have Sholins and singing and schmoozing, and it's cute.
There was an art exhibit on. Someone just filmed on one of these huge Meisharim tishes with like an entire room. I don't know what Rebbe was, but it was like, you know, the stripes, and he was showing me Bikisha or whatever, and passing around the whole cooked chicken, and they're just like passing around the whole chicken, and everyone's like taking little pieces, and you can listen to it. Like, it's such an interesting thing just to see on a screen. Great, short. I don't know if I'd actually be interested in knowing, but
I've seen
it was
Rebbe's
literally like
tissues.
as an art exhibition.
There are plenty of
You can go to
Rebbe's
Rebbe's
tissues.
There's
There's
some
some.
Rebbe's tissues you can go to.
Yeah,
When I was a kid, we used to go all the
Right.
time on that.
Yeah. Where in Muncie?
Yeah, it's like insane.
No, we had a house in the Catskills in New York, and there was a the one old couple had the Scalena Rebbe.
Oh, well, he was a beautiful Jew.
Oh.
He was a beautiful Jew. I went to when I was a teenager going tea shopping. I used to go to the Baba Rebbe.
Until we finish the
I love
show.
these stories.
No,
No,
okay, let them record.
Yeah, let them record. I used to go to the Baba Rebbe in Borough
Which one?
Park.
Before they split?
Yeah, for sure before they split, because it was when I was a teenager. That was like
Right.
10,000 years ago. So, and the shul.
Like, she must be so old.
Um, so I remember that I would go to Borough Park every once in a while. I came from Queens, New York. Are you from New York?
New Jersey.
New Jersey. So, okay. Queens, New York is like the bastion of, in those days, the bastion of empty. There was like nothing going on in Queens, New York. Especially where I live, forgive me if I'm insulting anybody, but where I lived in Bayside, Queens, which is like a little bit past Hillcrest, and there was nothing going on like spiritually, and it was beautiful, great Jews, wonderful, like salt of the earth, you know, young Israel, strong, moral, high integrity, but there was no Rebbes or anything like that. So every once in a while I would go to like a foreign land called Borough Park and Brooklyn, and I loved the Tishin. So, but you know, I remember going to the Baba Vatish not only once. I went a few times, and the shul was such. I haven't been to the shul since then, but I didn't know where to sit. Like I wanted to see everything, so I didn't.
No Viber shul up
Okay,
on top?
so there was no Viber shul on top. The Viber shul there was on the other side of a wall. So I did what all the little girls were doing. There was a bunch of little girls. When I say little girls, they were like 5 and 6 years old, and I was like 16. They sat on top of the wall of them. There was like a wall, and it was about 2 feet wide, and they just climbed and sat on top, and saw everything. So that's what I did. I just sat on top of this wall with my feet dangling on the other side, not on the men's side, and I was just watching. And I had no clue that was inappropriate. I was just so thirsty to see, and to their credit, no one. I did this several times, and no one told me anything else. There were a lot of women, and the women on the other side listening to the singing and schmoozing, but I just wanted to see the tzaddikim. And
How did you know the brother?
I don't know. I don't remember. Someone must have told me. Yeah,
Guy to do that?
we were all thirsty for you. We were all thirsty. When you're thirsty, you go to where there's water. Okay.
You did that? They laid on the
Who was there? Reb Meir? In the snow?
Hillel.
Hillel.
Lay down on the ice glass roof.
Yeah.
Froze
And
to
froze.
death.
Yeah. Not to death, but he froze. Yeah.
Almost, yeah.
Okay. So I wanted.
Oh, we talked about, you started about Yad
Oh,
Kislev
thank
and
you, thank you.
stopped.
Yud Kislev, thank you for getting me back.
Because I really
So,
am thirsty to
yeah,
know.
okay. So Yud Kislev is called the Rosh Hashanah of Hasidus. Why? There's a very long history of Yud Kislev. It seems the most recent of Yud Kislev happened about 250 years ago, and that was the day that the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad, was released from jail. So the story there is that the Alter Rebbe, the Reb Shneur Zalman from Liadi, wrote a sefer called Tanya, and that sefer was the first book ever written to sort of like take some ideas of in Kabbalah and write them down for the regular man on the street, which was one of the innovations of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh had many, many different innovations, and one of them was to make a Jew feel happy about his Judaism or her Judaism, because that was petering out because of all the pogroms, etc. So the Baal Shem Tov was given into the world to try to inject into the Jewish people some hope, that because it was one of the worst parts of Jewish exile. There had just been a false Messiah. I don't know if you know that. You know the Shabtai Tzvi story.
So,
It was right after the Shabtai Tzvi period in the late 1700s.
wow.
The Shabtai Tzvi came after a terrible pogrom that killed millions of Jews, and then Shabtai Tzvi came and he said he's Mashiach and everybody's going to go back to Israel. Life's going to be wonderful, and he already had the support of many tzaddikim, and it turned out to be one big scam. Which was, he converted to Islam only because they threatened to kill him, and he just sort of like dropped out of the world. But and there were people who even after he did that considered him a special person, a holy man, whatever. But after Shabtai Tzvi, the Jewish people were terribly depressed, and
Were depressed when he was in prison?
they were depressed about life. They were depressed about their Yiddishkeit. Why isn't God being nicer to us? Why do the Jewish people have the worst life of all the people in the Western European and Eastern European world? Pogroms, murders, etc. It was a general depression. That's number one. Number two, there was an elitist kind of a mentality in the Jewish world, and that is, if you're a Talmid Chacham, then you're somebody, and then God loves you. And if you're just a regular shoemaker, okay. And it was sort of like subtle bullying in a very, very subtle way.
I feel in certain ways it's still
Okay, so yeah, and we have that. Of course, we have that. There's always been an elitist mentality in the planet. It's not just by Jews, it's by every single group. Anyway, the Baal Shem Tov came to the world, and he wanted to remind everyone that the simplest Jew is beloved in Hashem's eyes. We're all children of Hashem. We're all equal on a certain level. We all have the same capacity, basically, we all have the same soul. So he wanted to encourage the regular Hamonam. He also wanted to inspire them, and he also wanted to teach great concepts in a way that everyone could hear. And he wanted basically everyone to try to think about God. That's basically the Baal Shem Tov. He wanted everyone, bar none, men, women, children, to think about God, to make a relationship with God, to re-relate to Hashem. So his first students, the Baal Shem Tov didn't write any Sfarim. His students wrote Sfarim for him. And he had two primary students, and one of them was a Maggid of Mezrich. Both of them started out to be anti. It's always like this in these Baal Shem Tov stories, anti, and then he'd talk to them for a few minutes, and then they would be transformed. Okay, so that was and they would go around teaching and talking and inspiring and guiding and doing their avodas Hashem of uplifting the sparks. They would do secret avodas, secret services of God, going to different places and reciting brachot and having intention and trying to somehow bring Mashiach into the world. That was what the Baal Shem Tov was trying to do. Anyway, when after the Maggid of Mezrich came, Maggid of Mezrich had a student called the Alter Rebbe. He had a lot of students, but one of them was this young boy called Rebbe from Liadi, who became a super genius. And his talent was that he was able to take concepts in Kabbalah and make them into little bite-sized pieces.
Alter Rebbe?
Yeah. Well, the Alter Rebbe, now we call him that because there were 7 other Hasidic Rebbes, and he's the oldest one.
Of like 8.
Of 7.
What was his first name?
Shneur Zalman.
Shneur Zalman of Liadi.
Yeah, his house was Liadi, and what his last name was, I'm sure he had a last name, I don't know.
I went to his kever.
Well, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, once.
So you just had this at class?
We just went through, we had a source that was from the Rebbe Marash.
So you went through all the
And you know, when you were teaching me still, I have like a 2 charts in the back of my Neve notebook, which I finished here, which is cool. One chart is from it's like
the sphere on Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, and Yosef, David.
It's a zodiac chart from the book about the zodiac from Matthias Graylerson.
Okay.
We talked about that. I tried making a chart.
Yeah.
And the other chart I have is just like the list of like, okay, the Baal Shem Tov, where's Hasidut from,
yes,
and really like where are the lineages, and
Yes,
needing to put it in
it's
order,
such a
and, like,
listen. I went to a bris here in Yerushalayim Kodesh.
beautiful.
In which shul was that? I forgot which shul it was. In a Rebbe shul, because it was a Rebbe bris, and on the wall, on a like the size of that, maybe even bigger than that, picture was a yichus of that particular Rebbe. I'm so embarrassed that I forgot which one it was. From the Baal Shem Tov. In other words, all of the, not just his biological yichus, but also his spiritual, the Rebbes and their students and their Rebbes and their students
That's
until.
what I was looking for in a minute, just like, give me timelines, give me family trees.
Right. So this, so I could, if you want, I know
I
where
want to
that.
see it visually.
If you want to, see, I can tell you which shul this is. I have to just ask the Baal
I was getting just
HaSimcha.
from like the crash course in Jewish history book, just going
Right.
through and being like,
Right.
okay, and then Rabbi Nachman comes and he's like, family and this and this is like, here's all
So it's good to know, right?
And not being like just like the academic.
Yeah, good. It's good to know the history. Anyway, the Rebbe Shneur Zalman from Liadi wrote a sefer called Tanya. That sefer has 53 chapters, and it was a big deal because it was the first book.
Three names.
He had lots of names. The Baal Tanya means he's the author of the book Tanya. The Alter Rebbe means he's the oldest of the Chabad Rebbes, and his personal name was Shneur Zalman from Liadi. And he lived in the same exact time as the Vilna Gaon. 53 chapters. 53. And he was an incredibly powerful person. And as you know, the Hasidic Rebbes have huge amounts of power over the Hasidim. What do I mean by that? They don't wield power. People just are so drawn to them that whatever they say, they'll do. So in Russia, that was Tsarist Russia, anyone who had any power over any amount of people was considered a suspect. And sadly, there were the Isvexia, which was the Jewish liberals, even in those days, who didn't like what was going on. They didn't like that this Rebbe was being Makarev and bringing back to Judaism thousands of Jews who would have otherwise assimilated into Russian society and become Russian peasants and Russian whatever. So the Jews who were the liberal, secular, assimilated and assimilating Jews and wanted to assimilate others, they didn't like the Alter Rebbe at all. They were worried, they were afraid of him. So they went to the authorities and accused him of some false thing. Mm-hmm. And the Russian authorities were very happy to put a rabbi in jail, so they threw him into jail. Now, the Alter Rebbe understood this as not a physical jail at all. He understood that anything in the physical world is only a reflection of what's going on in Shemayim, which is basically a very big rule in Chassidus. It's a very big rule in Emes, in truth, is that whatever is happening now, that's why I have no problem talking about current events in Torah Parsha, because it's all one thing happening. Whatever is happening in the world is a reflection of what's going on in Shemayim. So he understood that very clearly, and he said there's a bez, just like in the earth, he was put into a jail and they were deliberating and debating his work, his sefer. So too in Shemayim, they're discussing whether it's the right time to reveal Hasidus to the world. Because again, the Baal Shem Tov didn't write, he only spoke. And the Maggid of Measures didn't write, he spoke. He was an itinerant. He would go from town to town and teach. He would give shiurim. But this is the first time that Hasidic thought was going to be written down and actually codified.
He hadn't yet written it?
He had written it.
But it wasn't.
And it wasn't yet published. He was in the process of it. And that's when they arrested him. So he interpreted it as, in Shemayim, they're deciding, should this happen?
To the world.
Should it come to the world?
He had already written all of it? Or he
All
was
of it. No, he had written it.
He didn't publish it already?
He didn't publish it yet.
Okay.
After 53 days, and the whole story of his whole incarceration is very interesting. You can read it on any Chabad website. They have all these stories. But after 53, he was released after 53 days. So he understood that every day they were deliberating a chapter of his sefer. Because the authorities weren't counting him. They didn't know. So, but he understood that every day was parallel to a chapter in his sefer. Mm-hmm. And at the end, when they said you're free to go because there's nothing to say, and that was also miraculous how the Tsarist Russia never let anyone free. They always killed you or whatever. They let him go, and not just that, but they let him go with great honor and etc. So he understood that from Shemayim they were giving him the go ahead, and he went full speed ahead to publish it. And to this day. And so he was released on Yud Kislev. That's when he was released. It took him a few days till he got out, till he actually left because there was Shabbos involved, and so they celebrate Yud Chaf, Chaf Aleph, a little bit today, Chai Kislev. We'll celebrate. And Chabad has a thing that they try to publish, even with a copying machine, in every city that there's a Chabad, they try to publish at least a copy of this Tanya to recreate the energy of the freedom that we should liberate the city spiritually. So that's the story of what happened to Kislev. The Rebbe said that this is not just a liberation for himself personally, it's a liberation for every single Jew from any spiritual ailments that they have. And he said, make it a big celebration, make it a big holiday, celebrate, learn, give tzedakah, take upon yourself, to be better.
Spiritual liberation?
For anything that's holding you back. That's why it's good to know about this, because, it's a powerful day to daven, and to be besimcha, and to learn Tanya a little bit. So by the way, for those of you who also want to this wasn't supposed to be today's shiur, but since I came in and you didn't know about it, so the thing that Chabad people do is they learn Sefer Tanya over the course of 1 year, just like we read the Torah over the course of 1 year, just like you say Tehillim over the course of 1 month, or it's mechulak, it's divided into. So they begin tonight and tomorrow, they begin Tanya.
Whoa.
So if you want to start learning Tanya, go online, go to Chabad.org, go to Rabbi Gordon, alav shalom. He was a great Tanya teacher, and start. See, very easy, because tomorrow's portion is just the introduction, they read the cover of it. You seem to know what I'm talking about. Yeah?
Oh, I'm just nodding because I'm just here.
That's sweet. That's sweet. And 1 second, and they finished now. Tanya now incorporates 3 other books after it. Shayich V'Amuna. There's a whole bunch of letters, whatever. There's extra.
Shayich V'Amuna is related to the Tanya?
Yeah, he wrote it.
Would you recommend?
So I've seen the book in Shayich V'Avoda. What's the difference?
I don't know. I have to look at that and see, because a lot of people have that. Shayich V'Amuna has a lot of different names. A lot of different books have that name, and that's a very, very excellent book, and it's not hard. It's at the end of Tanya. I'm sure in this room there must be a Tanya someplace, and people are beginning to read it again. And again, online now, you could get your daily Tanya sent to you in many different forms. If you want to do this,
Like
an app. I'm sure they have.
How long is each day's thing?
Okay, so Tanya's not an easy book. The first couple of Tanya's not an easy sefer. To learn, you have to learn it with a teacher. Each page is Rabbi Gordon does it in 20 minutes.
It's not
He
like
has-
the daily Tehillah.
It's not what?
It's not like the daily Tehillah.
Meaning?
It's more of a
Go
commitment.
into it.
It's more
Listen, there's no commitments. You can't do a segula wrong. You
I mean,
can't do spiritual work
Someone's doing
wrong.
shots, they can learn it every day. They can't
Okay, if
just
someone wants to do Daf Yomi and they want to finish up, even though I want to tell you that a lot of guys are hovering and they're like going crazy now because they have to finish up all the, catching up. Is that your husband that you're laughing?
Oh, well, he's not going to make it this time.
Okay. Next time, that's Rat
It's
Hashem.
almost the end of 7 years.
Yeah, they're making a big Sima Shasa. 7.5 years.
They're doing one in Poland.
They're doing one now in Poland also. Wow.
In the yeshiva there.
Wow, Lublin, where they started it. That's cool.
That's really cool.
Okay.
It's a whole,
It's a big thing, but it became a big thing. My biggest simcha is that one of my students, maybe she'll listen to this, I think she will. I have a big personal simcha here in that one of my students, actually they're both my students from Ezra Academy when I taught in America. So they made a Sima, her husband made a Sima Shas last week. He finished the whole Shas, and it was the first. Separate of, maybe he's doing it with them because they're already finishing now. But he is the first one, to my knowledge, and forgive me and correct me if I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, he's the first one, and I asked the principal also of this, he's the first one ever in the school of 50 years to ever have accomplished that, because it's a Baal Shuvah school.
Wow.
So that's a big thing. Ezra Academy of Queens. Okay.
It's a nachas.
It's a
Can
big
I ask a
nachas.
question?
You can ask me a million questions, because I don't know if I'm going to get to
What
this.
is it?
I'm not going to leave early because we're...
I heard that there's some connection to Yak Kislev and Shidduchim.
Okay, so now
What is
listen.
the
Okay, let me tell you.
connection?
Okay, let me tell you now. Before the Alter Rebbe, hundreds of years before the Alter Rebbe, there was a Kabbalist, there was a Makubal, and he said, I forgot his name, he said that Yud Tet Kislev, this is hundreds of years before, right? Before this whole story that I just told you, he wrote in his Sefer that Yud Tet Kislev is a day of Besoros Tovos, it's a day of good news, and if anyone wants good news, they should daven on Yud Tet Kislev for what they want, and Be'ezrat Hashem, they should see on that day, he said, on that day, good news. So there are many, many people who will, wait to get engaged on that day, like they know it's coming, but they'll wait, or whatever. So it's important. So he said this hundreds of years ago, and this year it comes out on a Tuesday, which is Bichlal, a day of good news. Yeah, Tuesday is a day where it says in Torah, Ki Tov Vayarshan et Kol Asher Asa Ki Tov twice. Monday didn't get any Ki Tov, that's why Mondays are difficult. Right, back to Monday, back to work, back to school. Monday is also the day of Gevurah in the Sefirot. Sunday is Chesed, Monday is Gevurah, Tuesday is Tiferes. Tiferes is a perfect balance of. So Tuesday in general, whenever anything comes out on Tuesday, it's a good mazel.
Also, things in threes, the third day.
It's the third day. The third day of anything is good, right? So this year's comes out very.
The third child, does that mean?
You're the first child. Yes, it means. Bezrat
I
Hashem.
think I was actually born on a Tuesday.
Yeah, you could look that up.
Look at that.
The Gemara tells us that if you're born on a Tuesday, it's a very good mazel. It means it's a very good
I was born
mazel.
on a Tuesday. I
Yeah?
looked it up the other day.
Wow.
The book of
So the Gemara says that if anyone born on a Tuesday has a very, this has nothing to do with you, just in telling you what the Gemara says. Anybody born on a Tuesday, because my son's born on a Tuesday, anybody born on a Tuesday is incredibly gifted and beautiful and wealthy and just very gifted, but has to be careful about boundaries.
Does Monday night count?
Yeah, Monday night, Tuesday.
My son was Monday night.
Oh,
what
there you go.
boundaries meaning of other people for myself.
Boundaries, because the grass was created on Tuesday and the grass kept infringing on other people's boundaries. So the Gemara says that people might be too lack of boundaries in all areas of interpersonal relations, etc. So they have to be careful with tznius and boundaries, but very gifted. Yeah, because that's about a boundary, putting up correct and healthy and appropriate boundaries. So some people could be the exact opposite. They could be like too boundaried and too closed off and whatever. Okay.
Yeah, I can relate to this.
Lots of davening on Tuesday, tonight, and tomorrow.
Can I just comment? There's such a wealth of knowledge, like all this random stuff.
This is
Like,
not
it's
random. This is
no,
really
random
so
and amazing. Like the way you bring all this information together. I'm just
Baruch Hashem,
I
Baruch Hashem.
appreciate it very much.
Baruch Hashem. Thank you, Hashem.
That's a
Thank
true
you.
teacher.
Thank
you
you.
know a lot of things.
Okay, that's enough. That's
Okay,
enough.
we're not supposed to talk about
So I get
Thank
that. I get that this
But-
Kabbalah said that it's a day of tefillah.
And then later on, it just worked out, quote unquote,
Shidduchim.
that
But why don't
no,
you
that
see-
okay, I don't know if any.
Anything but
I don't know if anything specifically shidduchim, but anything that you're, listen, opening up to the next level of life. People are imprisoned in their own little prisons, right? The Lubavitch Rebbe himself said that it's true that we're in prison, but we're sitting on the keys. We need
to first know that we're there.
So that's what he said. But to break out of whatever is happening that's limiting you, because
Who
a
said
prison
the
is
line about
the Lubavitch Rebbe.
I
Isn't that a
wonder if
great
Lizzie
line?
knows, 'cause she has a line in one of her songs.
Who?
Lizzie,
Yeah.
one of her songs. It's exactly that idea. I don't know.
Oh, well, Lizzie
Should
was.
we do
Yeah, tell her.
I'll tell her.
I feel bad I missed her. She's such a
She
sweetheart.
was so good at the.
Oh, she's always great. I missed her because I was in America then.
She got better also. She really, really nurtured her talent.
Hashem.
She's great.
Baruch
Not a whole
Hashem.
world.
Give her a big hug for me. Lizzie, if you're listening, is she in my thing? If you're listening?
She's on the
Okay,
group.
so,
I mean, I know she's in the WhatsApp group.
okay. In ours or in, who this is?
Yours.
Mine. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Ours, whatever. Okay, so why shidduchim specifically? I don't know. I guess because that's the thing in this generation. That's the main ikuv in this generation. And Bezrat Hashem, listen, I want to tell you something. One very good thing to think about in terms of the shidduchim, the shidduch quote unquote crisis. I don't know, crisis. I don't like to use that word.
A book on the shidduch poems, and it's called the shidduch crisis.
Listen, anybody will start to capitalize on whatever crisis is going on in the world. But I will tell you something very nice. Listen, it says that what happened in the desert, because now I don't know if I should say this in public, and forgive me, I don't want to insult anybody. Yeah, but then when I say that, people was like, what'd she say?
You had to, if you don't want it later.
Okay.
I don't know what to hear.
I don't know, and with my thing, if I stop it, I don't know if it could. Gonna go back
Pause
on
it.
again.
Pause it.
I don't know how to pause anything. Well, usually I erase things, and that's. Okay, listen. The Torah tells us like this: in the desert, after we got the Torah, right? So there was a Chet HaEgel, the sin of the golden calf. Who didn't participate in the sin of the golden calf?
The women.
The women. After the
And the Levim.
and the Levim, and a smattering of others, but the women. If you want to talk about a big group, it was the women. Now, then a little bit later came the Meraglim and the spies. Who didn't participate? The women. So what happened to the men in the desert?
We didn't have the women. Just,
What happened to them? Did they enter into Eretz Israel? No. In the 38 years of wandering in the desert, all of the men who were over the age of 20 when they did the sin of the spies died.
That generation died
That
out.
generation, but the men died out.
The women didn't die.
The women
during
didn't
that
die,
time.
no.
During the traveling?
No.
Wow.
Oh, there you go. There you have an entire nation of incredibly virtuous women who didn't have their zivug with
Oh my gosh,
them.
are we total just like gilguling of them? And
I
like,
didn't say it, but you
child.
did.
And that's why literally anywhere you go, it's like, what is the segula? What is the bracha? Is
But
today
not
special?
just this, but you
It's
see
like,
women
let's get
now
done.
who are so incredible. You see incredible, and that's sometimes the ones who can't find their zivug yet, because they're just like, right?
Whoa.
It's an interesting thought.
It's like the
So-
women became, I don't want to say too good for them, but it's like the caliber is so,
Okay,
everything's
so-
just so off. There's no way to even
hold your standards a little lower because you're not finding someone.
Yeah, niche.
Okay,
No.
so you see, that's why that's
So what
why.
if someone did have that?
No.
Okay, so listen, wait, I'll tell you. So that's why I'm telling you, number one, that we see that phenomenon repeating itself. We're in the land back, and there's a huge population of incredibly wonderful, elevated, not their fault, anything women who are yet seeking their zivug. So now, when I do that with that information, okay, so what I'll say is that something that I actually heard today in the year before, a lot of times these incredible women perhaps wouldn't have thought that a Baal Tshuva, a beginner, would be appropriate for them, because there are these incredible Beis Yaakov women, or there's the incredible, and sometimes those who are healthy, talented, and sincere men, Baalei Tshuva, are indeed appropriate for these very elevated spiritual Beis Yaakov girls, and they would never in a million years think that, because who thinks of such an
I feel like
inappropriate
people are
group?
much more open-minded now.
Okay, that's
What
why.
is it with
Because
the
of the
other
situation. That's number one. Number two, I'm going to tell you something from the Ribnitzer Rebbetzin that you said you were
I
neighbors
see
with her.
the picture of the Ribnitzer.
That is, he's my shomer on my phone. I have him on my phone. That he should make sure that whenever I open my phone,
I get one of those.
I got that by the Tzion, by the Kever.
I spend so much time on that camera.
Yeah, it's a good
We'll
place.
talk about it after.
Okay, we'll talk about it after. So anyway, the Rebbetzin she used to like to read. There are certain midrashim that talk about the 10 lost tribes, and the tribes who there is Jews in this world who never went into exile, meaning the exile happened because they're not here in Eretz Israel visible, but they kept old biblical holy ways, and those people are so incredibly mentally, intellectually, and morally and physically superior to anything we could ever see on planet Earth at this moment. And they're hidden until Mashiach comes.
They're alive.
They're alive. Yeah, so she used to like to tell that.
And
Rebbetzin
then
used-
from the hidden tribes.
from the hidden tribes, from some of
Like
them.
Lamed Vav Tzaddikim, but there's no connection.
It's a different group. A different group. And she would tell these, when she would meet these incredible women who were, she was one of them, because she herself was alone for many years. I don't know if you know her story. She was married and then divorced with kids, till she met and married the Rebbe, who was 40 years at least older than her, at least 40 years older
40
than her.
years?
At
old?
least
I knew
40
they were-
years.
I thought they were 20 years.
Oh, no, at least 40 years, depending on how old, I know how old she knows how old she knows, but the Rebbe lost track of how old he was, because he was not in a different place, he was a different place in time.
But he was alive so many more years after her, right?
No, just the opposite. He
The
died 20
opposite?
years before she died, yeah.
Oh, Because I remember when
Rebbetzin
they were
is
literally our neighbors in New York. In the
across the
area,
street.
down the block.
Down the block, because I knew her across the street neighbor. I think her name was Horowitz. I think I forgot.
That was Rabbi Steiner's shul. They had a little shul across the road.
Yeah.
That after both of them passed away, this shul became it was like his people kind of moved there. It's very interesting.
I have to talk to you after class. We have to talk because I
every
have.
time I passed the places was dingy, but there was something you felt like there was
Which Ribnitzer?
Yeah, I'm going this way because when we walked up the road, Ribnitzer was on this side, and it was you felt like there was this energy, like angels hovering over.
There was so many angels there. When I would go in,
it felt a little dark in a way after they passed, after nobody was living
I
there.
wasn't there after the Rebbe passed and the Rebbetzin moved out to another place, and I never went back into that house again.
Okay,
I couldn't do it. But when the Rebbe was alive, you walked in, even just when you drove into the gate I felt like I was in Yerushalayim, not just in Yerushalayim. I was by the kotel. I was kissing the kotel. It was so, and the physicality of the house was not at all.
Yeah.
It fell falling apart in structure, but there was something.
I thought they didn't have children together.
They did. She had children from her first marriage, and
They adopted all these people.
they adopted. Well, she met the Rebbe. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, so I'm not going to say who it is. But the Rebbe told her who were their children from their previous Gilgulim, who ended up being in their house a lot. Like they were their biological children from a previous. Rebbetzin, I miss her. Anyway, but she would tell all these incredible women. She would say, "You never know. Maybe you have to wait until Mashiach comes and to get the elevated, highest level of your zivug, because right now on planet Earth there's nobody on your level."
Or they're ripening.
Or they're ripening. Yeah, or they're getting ready. Okay, any other questions? So we know about your test, Kislev. We're ready? Tomorrow tonight. Light a candle for the Maggid of Mezrich tonight. It's always good to light candles for Tzaddikim. Light a candle for the Alter Rebbe, even though it's not his yahrzeit. But when you light a candle, you bring
Why
their.
the Maggid of Mezrich?
Because tonight's his yahrzeit. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Tonight's his yahrzeit.
We've started doing that on Shabbat. Just lighting an extra candle.
Good.
What do
I
you
do
wanna
that
bring down
also.
tonight? I don't
You can
know.
bring down a lot. You don't have to just do one. You can bring down a
Yeah.
lot. Rebbetzin, Alei Shalom, she should have. I'm sure she's having them, but she should have even a greater licht at Gan Eden. She used to have. She lit tons of candles for all these tzaddikim, and in her last house where she lived before she passed, she had in her kitchen. She had a whole counter, and on the counter was only candles. She would buy these 7-day candles. You know those big fat 7-day candles, and she would write. She had a gorgeous handwriting. She would write the names of the tzaddikim. She would write like Ribnitzer ben Sasha, and then she would on a beautiful piece of paper. Then she would tape it to the candle, and she would write the Rebbe, of course, and the Stefaneshka, and the Visioner, because that's where he came from that line, and the Visioner, because that's where her father came from that line, and the Satmarav. And she would write all the names, and she had like an altar. It was you walked into her
How
kitchen.
many years ago did she pass?
So let me tell you. Give me a
Because
second.
now I'm remembering
4 or
when they had
5.
the second kid right there. Right? Aren't they next to each other?
Yeah.
And now I'm remembering. It can't
She's
be
by his
that many
head.
years ago.
No, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. Give me a second.
Right before I moved here.
So
I
that's
remember this.
the Rebbetzin bought that piece of land next to the Rebbe. There was big machlokas who's going to be buried next to him. So she had that piece of land. The Rebbe said she has to be next to him.
Yeah, who else would be next to?
Different people want to be next to Tzaddikim, you know. He's a big
School,
tzaddik
I
and
think it's his
big
wife.
school. Right. There was all kinds of stuff. So the Baruch Hashem, she's next to him.
He never had a first wife, right?
This was not his first wife. Rebbetzin was not his first wife, no. And he was married before this Rebbetzin. So I could tell you Rebbetzin stories, like Rebbe stories. He was married for 50 years or something to his
50?
at least 50, and they never had children, and she passed away. And she's buried here in Eretz Yisrael.
What's her name?
What was her name? I forgot, but it was her yahrzeit a few weeks ago. And if you look
How come we
in,
never acknowledge her?
that's a good question.
I don't know that. Just because she didn't have children. doesn't
Right.
she's
So
extinct. Whatever.
so there are people. So here in Yerushalayim Kodesh, when it's her yahrzeit, they plaster big signs all over Ribnitzer Rebbetzin, And she's buried, I'm not sure she's buried in Sanhedrin or Har Hazeisim, but she has a niece who was very close to her, and she has like her sisters and brothers' families, and they maintain her memory and name people after her. I don't neglect her, I just never knew her. This one was my friend, so I'm very close with her. But he was married for many, many decades to that one.
How did you come to be friends with her?
Oh, that's the whole story, how I came to be friends. Through friends, but really Hashem was so kind to me. Hashem made all kinds of ways. In fact, Yehudis is now, she told me who her father was in school with. Some of the people that she mentioned were his chevra. Now they're still alive, Baruch Hashem.
When he was alive, like he was known for his.
He was a miracle worker. He was a total.
Specifically for people to have children, right?
To have children, but not just children. To have refuahs. People came to him deaf. They walked out. They could hear.
No.
Children came to him blind. They walked out. They could see.
In the moment.
In the moment.
He's only there's a story in Russia with the foxes walking with him.
I don't know if that's story, but he used to break ice in Russia, go to the mikveh in the freezing cold. He was not in this world. I saw him. He was not in this. Ooh, what a treat! Mazel tov. I didn't give you a personal mazel tov. How's Dina feeling? Yeah, and how's baby feeling?
She started to, mamish, smile.
Yeah, and how are the kids? And how's your son? He wanted a boy.
Actually, you know what?
I know. He doesn't mind. Yeah, there's still chance. There's still time. There's Yom Hashem.
Yes, it was a joke.
Everybody knows Leibish?
Yeah.
And Dina just had a baby girl. So give her
I
from
met the baby
Yes.
at the Neve.
Oh, she came. Dina came to the
Yeah.
Only nachas from everybody. Most all from yourself. How's your thing doing? Your
My writing?
yeah.
I
Nigmar?
have to really, Dina said, I don't think of it. I have to daven. Like, I have to daven to change the minds of my committee.
They're still giving you a hard time?
It got past my professor, he's totally cool with it. The people around the committee, the system is so crazy, they have to be critical. They can't just say we like it.
It's all sheker. That's how you know that it's an important thing, because there's so much opposition, especially in Rebbe Nachman.
It's a good day. You got Kislev. It's a good day to daven.
Yeah.
I don't know what this manifesto thing is, but
Tonight.
It's a bit of PhD, but yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. It's a crazy thing. I went to the other side.
No, you're combining the two worlds.
It is combined.
I don't think of it as going to the other side.
That's
It's
right.
actually really inspiring.
I'm hoping
Listen,
that,
Wow.
the Alter Rebbe got his book released on Yotes Kislev.
It's 2/8.
So you have to do the
It's
same thing.
supposed-
That's
yeah.
your tefillah on Yotes Kislev. There was opposition, and then it came into the world. So taka.
That's the
Okay, so
PhD.
that's your tefillah. Okay, that's right. Okay, hatzlacha.
I'm really inspired.
Great, I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
If you actually
I'd
read
love, yes. I'd love to. I'll send Dina my
it. Send it
email.
in your email.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay, good time.
This is a funny shir today. Nothing that I
This shit is
prepared.
hilarious. When I was watching this,
Nothing that
Hysterical.
we just had one.
I love it.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God,
do you know what his PhD in?
Yeah, Rabbi Nachman. And Rabbi Nassan is a whole. He
He's
has
a
a.
PhD, Rebbe Nachman.
Yeah. He has a PhD.
Oh my
He got approved, and but there's people who are anti, who don't want to. It's a very good piece of work.
Wow.
But there are people.
He's like a thesis, he's a
It's
book,
No, the
It's a
thesis
book.
is on Rabbi Nachman and Rabbi Nassan, but
Yeah.
what's the PhD in?
That's what it's on.
on
Yeah,
like,
he's
specifically
gonna
what
have a
about-
title of I don't know what it's gonna be called.
like the something of like just their writings, their
I don't know what it's called. I don't know.
Them
He
in the
framed it.
secular
He
world.
framed it in a title that sounds very secular. But that's what it is. That's why he said he went to the other side, because he had to do it like that to get it approved.
It's okay. It's like it's in a process.
No, that's the thing, is that whenever you, in Bresel Chassidus, Rabbi Nachman, at least I can teach one thing in Bresel. Rabbi Nachman says that whenever there's any spiritual energy that has to come down, there's always going to be opposition to it. There has to be equal and opposite.
Yeah. Yeah, we learned about like the way
and-
that souls come down. Like it needs to be in such a weird way because it's such a holy thing.
That's right. Especially David HaMelech's soul, how that came down. Really, it's not just weird,
Like
the regular way
Yeah.
of weird that we all go
the
through.
Mashiach needs to come in such an, seemingly off and nasty,
Correct.
crooked way,
Correct,
because it's
correct.
like it can't be just easy because it's way too holy, and it needs to have some of this like, ugh.
So,
involved.
so how that's explained. The words that are used are that there has to be an equal and opposite balance in the world. So you're pouring in so much holiness. There has to be the potential for equal and opposite lack of holiness. So that's what's called like the satan or the midas hadin has to be appeased. In other words, if you're bringing in such a big neshama, then right away the whole world's going to do tshuva. There's an off balance. The seesaw has to always remain straight. So you have to introduce dafka into that neshama the potential for people to make such big mistakes that they'll offset the potential that neshama has to bring people to tshuva. And that's when Mashiach finally comes. Listen, Moshe Rabbeinu was a Mashiach, and in his time you had, when he was born, was the whole Egyptian exile, and David HaMelech and all the stories about David HaMelech. And but when the final Mashiach is finally given permission, then there's not going to be any free choice, because then the balance will be completely swung to the right, and that's it. It'll be over.
Can't get too easy.
Okay, where were we?
We're talking about the Rebbetzin.
Rebbetzin.
Some children, some Gilgalim, some angels.
Gilgalim, angels. So I'll tell you one story from the Rebbetzin, because actually the hashgacha is that today's Torah teaching, which we were going to learn, is Reish Lamed Daled
I mean,
Nikutz.
I don't used to go into work today. Like, I don't know what you're doing. But
I'm
here
here
for
25 minutes.
Okay, I'm here. I'm
I'm
here. But I just want to tell you that today, what I prepared to learn today with you was Reish Lamed Daled in Likutei Moharan, the first section. I was only going to do the last 4 lines of it, but the beginning, which I was prepared to skip, but clearly God didn't want me to because it came through you, was all about Sipurei Tzaddikim and knowing how to tell the story of Tzaddikim. So even though we didn't, I'll do the last 4 lines with you, which I prepared, but the whole beginning of this Torah is about the healing aspect of when you tell stories of Tzaddikim and how it heals your emunah, it heals your soul. It's a balm. It's a lotion to the neshama of the person. It's a lotion to your brain, to your heart, literally to your body. It's a healing to say stories of tzaddikim. So I'll tell you a story from the Rebbetzin and Rebbetzin Rebbe. They should both have a lift in Gan Eden and be good to Beitz for all of us. They should daven and bless us all. The Rebbetzin, the Rebbe, when the Rebbe was, I think he was when he was newly widowed, I think, from the wife that he lived with for many, many decades. So he was in Borough Park, and the Rebbetzin was a young woman, and she was living either in Williamsburg or in Borough Park, and she went to him for a bracha. I don't think she knew that his wife had passed, and anyway, he was an old man, and she was newly divorced.
I just can't wrap my head around the fact that they were 4 years.
Listen, she and he had such a love. I saw this part with my own eyes, how much she loved him, like as if he
was
would,
in awe of him.
not just in awe of him, she loved him like a geschmack. He was so, I only saw him when he had already had his stroke. She loved him like a buba, like a geschmack. She loved, they were very lovey-dovey. And when they, okay, there's lots of stories about them, but let's go back. When she went, so she went to him for a bracha. She wanted to go, before she knew he was a big tzaddik.
She didn't know him. She knew he was a big Rebbe, and she went to him for.
Yeah, she went to him for a why? Because she was newly divorced with 3 little girls. She had had an arranged marriage from Williamsburg. Didn't work out. And so she was going to go to him for a bracha. Right? She should forgive me because I'm sure her presence is here. I'm not quite, I have to get the story 1,000% right. I only heard this like at least 10 times from her. I think that, okay, so she was going to go to him for a bracha. before she went to him for the bracha, she had a dream. And, okay, give me a second. Okay, I have the chronology a little bit off. I know that she went to him for a bracha, and he gave her a bracha, and she was very moved by it. And then, I'm not sure if she went to him for another bracha or this was their engagement story, because they got engaged when they got engaged. But she had this dream. This was the dream. In the dream, she sees herself going to the Rebbe for a bracha. Okay, so, and people did that. And she sees that she's in the waiting room, in this dream, she sees she's in the waiting room, and the Gabbai is calling everybody, you know, like by who came first or who was ever, and he's not calling her. And people are coming in and going before her, and she's getting very frustrated in the dream because she wants her turn to get a bracha, and it's not happening. And then she's waiting for hours and hours in the dream, and nothing is happening. And finally, the Gabbai says, "Okay, the Rebbe's done for the night. No more brachas." And she's the only one left in the room that didn't get a bracha. And the Gabbai says, "That's it. We're closing up shop." And she's so frustrated. She doesn't know what to do. She says to the Gabbai, "I'm waiting here for hours and hours. I was the first one here." And he says, "Sorry, nothing I can do about it." And so she she leaves. And as she's leaving, she sees the Rebbe walking up a very big staircase. This is her dream. She sees the Rebbe walking up a very big staircase. And she's so frustrated because she's embarrassed to call out, "Hi Rebbe, I've been waiting for all these years, like all these months and for bracha, or hours for bracha." And she can't talk. But she's just watching him with like this pang. And he gets to the top of the steps, and there's a door, and he opens the door. And just before he goes into the room, he looks at her, who's at the bottom of the steps in the dream, and he says to her, "Our story was written in the Chumash Bereshis, Misheshes Yimei Hamasa." Our story is written from the 6 days of creation. And then she wakes up. That was her dream. Okay. So she sat with that dream for a very long time. And I forgot, again, the chronology of when, what. Okay, so then that's how I knew your neighbor. Then they called, when the Rebbe's wife passed, then one of his Gabbayim, who she knew, called her to say that the Rebbe would like to marry. He wants to get married, he wants to have children. And across the street from her, that was not the house that they shared. It was across the street from, maybe it was that house. Across the street from her is an almanah, is a widow with children, a youngish widow with children. And
Who's speaking to who here?
okay, so after the dream is over, she has this dream, and that's one part of the story. A little bit later, and that part I'm not sure.
She got that bracha from him.
After she got the bracha, after she had the dream, a little bit later, months later, I don't know, she gets a call, a real physical long life call from the Gabbai, one of the Gabbayim that was tending to the Rebbe. And he said to her, "There's a widow across the street from your house with young children. The Rebbe would like to, we're looking for a wife for the Rebbe. And we've been sifting through all the people, and she was then living in Muncie. And we want to know, since I know you and you know her, could you ask her if she's interested in such a shidduch?" So the Rebbetzin, then she wasn't a Rebbetzin yet, she went across the street to ask this girl, this woman, who was older than she was. And the woman said, no, that's not for her. So the Rebbetzin came back, and she called back the Gabbai, and she said she's not interested. The neighbor that you asked me to find out about isn't interested. Then the Rebbetzin said, again, she wasn't the Rebbetzin then, she said, "But wow, what is a chus that would be for anyone to marry him?"
And at this point, she's alone with 3 daughters.
And so the Gabbai said,
Daughters?
3 daughters. And the Gabbai said, "I'm going to call you back." And then he called her back and he said, "Would you be interested?" And the Rebbetzin said, she was like flabbergasted. Now the Rebbetzin herself comes, she's actually a cousin of mine. We found out, her mother told me that we're related.
She was 25, 26.
She was 34.
34?
And was
Wait,
32 or
She
34.
married a 75.
75-year-old man.
That's
At
okay.
least he was 75. So wait, I'm not finished. So clearly, I guess the Gabbai went back. Now this is all behind the Rebbe's back. Like the Rebbe didn't know that they were making all these inquiries. But this one they asked him about. This one they asked him about.
Did he remember her from when she had come for a bracha?
Thousands and thousands of people came to him for brachas. Maybe tens of thousands of people. But wait, I'm not ready. I'm not finished. So he calls her back and he said, the Rebbe, this Gabbai actually asked the Rebbe. The others he didn't. This one he asked the Rebbe. I don't know why he asked the Rebbe, but he did. And maybe because she was divorced as opposed to a respectable quote-unquote widow. Anyway, the Gabbai called back and said, the Rebbe is interested in meeting you. He's interested in meeting you for marriage. So the Rebbetzin was like fainting. She was like, that came out of nowhere. And she had been in a very, very difficult part of her life at that particular time. She had been trying to support herself in the business that she was working in, failed, and she had her kids, and it was not an easy time for her at all. But her midah was to be besimcha tamid, like that was her thing. So she valiantly tried, and her nature was like that. She was incredibly loving and accepting and warm, and anyway. So, but still it was a shock. And she herself came, it was מאוד מיוחסת. She came from a very, 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 very important, holy, and very, very amazing family. She was related to all the Rebbes. I knew this because her mother told me this, that we were all related to every Rebbe that in the whole Hungarian world, that's what she's related to. And I'm also related to them because there was a cousin involved there. Okay. So she decides she's going to go to the Pigisha. Now you don't have like dating with Rebbes. It doesn't work like that. So how do you do it? So she was so down and out that she didn't have even something proper to wear that she felt was mechubad enough. She had to borrow something to wear. Anyway, they come to pick. I forgot how I think she had to take trains. I don't know how she got there. And he was in Seagate. He was in Seagate then, in Brooklyn, Seagate. So she said that she came they sat in the living room of his house, with all the gabbaim around. And,
They didn't go out?
no, they didn't go out. Are you kidding?
It's a business meeting.
No, you mean the Gabbaim didn't go out.
Oh, the gabbaim didn't go
Yeah,
out.
that's what I mean.
Oh, I thought you said they went out. No, the gabbaim, they went out. They went out a little bit. It was not like private, Who knows how many cameras were, because there's pictures of it. Anyway, whatever.
Pictures of them sitting in that meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Wow.
So, anyway, the bottom line is that the Rebbetzin had to decide before she met him. If he said yes, she's going to say yes. Like there's no like hanging out and let's getting to know each other. That's not how that world works. It was about a decision. Like, do you want to be the Rebbetzin? And the Rebbe wouldn't have met her. The Rebbe had Ruach HaKodesh. He wouldn't have met her had he not thought that she was his matziim. And so basically it was on her. It was basically her decision. So she had to decide that before she got there. Anyway, so in the course of the conversation, which they discussed many things, some of them she did share. None of them will I share. But one of the things, they got engaged that night. That was it. They made a l'chaim. They made
What about
l'chaim.
that dream?
Wait, that night they made
Yeah,
a
right
l'chaim?
away. Yeah, she had to call her parents. Actually, she didn't call her parents that night because she was afraid. The Rebbe was older. Her father was younger than the Rebbe. They were the same age. Anyway, in that Pigisha, the Rebbe said to her, she said to the Rebbe, I had this dream. Then she remembered it. She said it was out of her and had been out of her mind for a long time. It was a dream.
She called him Rebbe?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know what she called him when there was no one else there, but whenever she would speak to him in front of anyone or about him, she would call him Rebbe. So she said Rebbe, and he called her Mamala.
Oh my gosh!
That's what he called her. So I know I feel like crying when I
don't
say
know why I'm
that.
so bothered about the 40-year difference.
Oh, no, don't be bothered by it.
Something's not sitting right.
Oh, she loved him to pieces. And they loved each other very much. Anyway, whatever it was.
His first wife was more his age appropriate.
Correct. And by the way, I saw the Rebbe, when you saw the Rebbe at age 75, he had more energy than all of us put together. He would have 36-hour days he would have sometimes 72-hour days. He fasted every day. He was a physical powerhouse because he wasn't in his body. And he was a gorgeous, beautiful, he had a beautiful face. Beautiful, beautiful face. But anyway, going back, so at the thing, when they get the Mein L'chaim and all the Gabbayim wish the Mazel Tov and they wish each other Mazel Tov and all of that, then she remembered her dream and she said it to him. She said, Rebbe, wait, I had a dream. And she told him the dream. And he said to her, that wasn't the dream. I came to you. And I was telling you. And I was trying to, because we've been here before and we're a true zivug and we have to do these, we have whatever. And it wasn't a dream. It was me coming to tell you that our story has been written.
I didn't know that. I mean,
He could do that, yeah.
So when she came, like when he was.
He knew her right away. He said, of course he knew. But he had to do it in a way that would be, because it was, again, with Derech HaTeva, 40-year difference, at least 40 years. So he couldn't impose, that on her. But it had to be like that, and it had to be completely willingness on her. I'll tell you another thing that he did also in that way. But that's what he said to her. We've been, this is it, And she said as soon as she saw him the first time, she was like, there was no doubt, not for a second. There was no age gap. There was nothing. It was just souls meeting souls. It was a real soulmate.
Wow. How long was their marriage?
Okay, so
18 years, right?
20, something like that. Because then what did he do? He wanted to bring Mashiach quicker. So again, he asked her. He said he wants to do a sacrifice, like what you heard this was saying about her father, that he wanted to have Yisurim in this world, so he should take away from the next world. So big tzaddikim have different mindsets than us. We try to avoid Yisurim, we try to avoid suffering, we try to avoid tests, we try to avoid all of that. But the Rebbe said, and this was with the acceptance of the Lubavitch Rebbe, because she used to go as a go-between. She would come to Lubavitch Rebbe on Sundays and tell him messages. They would have messages back and forth. So he said that he would like to take upon himself suffering for Klal Yisrael, that should shorten the exile and hasten the redemption. That's what he said to her. But he'll only do it with her permission, because that will mean that her life will be impacted. So he asked her permission, and the Rebbe, that was the part that she told me. There was a lot of else in that conversation, but I don't exactly know if he told her what Yisurim he would be doing. I'm not quite sure but it was for sure going to have to be with her husband, with her agreement, and because it would impact her life. And I don't know. And she said, Rebbe, whatever you think needs to be done, I'm just whatever you say. I'll just give me strength to be able to bear it, and whatever you say. And so he called either two or three dayanim, and he wrote a contract in front of them with God that says that he wants to give. Wants to make a sacrifice to Klal Yisrael, that the Mashiach should come easier.
He didn't know what he was giving or what he was choosing. He didn't decide.
I think that's.
Wow.
And I think that. And a day or two later, he had a stroke, which debilitated him for the rest of his life. And that's when I saw him, when he had already his stroke, which completely
debilitated. Then he couldn't be a shaliach for Klal Yisrael, so I don't understand.
So I don't understand tzaddikim. I don't understand things like that either. But I will tell you that he was constantly in a state of dvekas with Hashem, even though his body wasn't in any way responding. And every once in a while, he would go above that stroke, and he would do miracle things every once in a while. But it wasn't anymore the same Kabbalah's kahal. He didn't have he wasn't receiving people and giving verbal advice and giving verbal brachas. He did something else.
How many years did he live in that state?
I don't know, a lot. 8, 9, I don't know the chronology.
And how many extra years, not extra, but after he passed, how many more years did Rebbetzin live?
I should do all these calculations.
Probably like a good 40 years, no?
How many?
At least 20 years. No.
Okay, so let me tell you how, I'll tell you. The Rebbe's the Rebbe's Tzira came on Motzei Simchas Torah, and I'll tell you how many years ago.
Motzei Simchas Torah?
Motzei Simchas Torah, yeah, and I'll tell you, because the night that he died, I wasn't supposed to go to his funeral because the night that he died, I had a wedding to go to. One of my Ezra kids, who got married, two of them, a couple, that got married. Who gets married Motzei Simchas Torah? They wanted to do it then. I don't know why, and they got married then. So I had to go to the wedding because it was my students. I ran out of the house. Second Yontif was over, and in those days there were no cell phones, no cordless phones, no nothing. And they were trying to get a hold of me. I think it was also Motzei Shabbos, or it was just Motzei Yontif, I forgot. But I ran out to this wedding. And when I got back on my answering machine, in those days we had answering machines, I had I can't imagine, I don't know how many people call me back, nobody said it on the call me back. So it was the middle of the night, I'm not going to call anybody back. So then finally they called me again, and I finally was home, I picked up the phone and they told me.
You must have been really connected there because...
Yeah, so then, wait, I'll tell you. So now they're married, I'm trying to think how old their oldest kid is. That's how I can go backwards and tell. I mean, I could just look it up on the phone. You could look up on your phone when they're
They
in
did have children together?
No, they didn't.
So
This couple that got married that night,
Oh,
I was trying to think how, but you could look up when the Rebbetzin, when he passed, when she passed, you can do that. I don't know the dates. She passed on a Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, 4 or 5 years ago. Anyway, so that's a few of their stories, of Tzaddikim stories. Okay.
We just spoke about in the third time on the health class, this is at least the first time I'm hearing the idea of Kol HaMoed, what